Did you know that somebody spoke after Martin Luther King? Did you know that? Does anybody remember who spoke after Martin Luther King? You don't. And here I stand preaching after B.J. Clark. So if I mess up, you won't remember. In every notable story, there is great conflict, and there is an overcoming of that conflict, whether it be a story of good and evil, of the rich and the poor, of the weak and the strong. In the greatest account of all history, the Bible, there is a struggle between light and darkness. Jesus said, "Ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid." The world around us is lost in darkness, and Jesus expects us to be a light. So what does it mean to be the light? Well, let's go back through the history of the Scriptures and get a better understanding of what that light is. Understand what God expects from us. Turn back to Exodus chapter 13. We're going to do a lot of reading today. In Exodus chapter 13, the Israelites are fleeing from Egypt. And their death is surely behind them. The Egyptians are coming. And in verse 21 and 22, "And the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead them the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, to go by day and night. He took not away the pillar of the cloud by day, nor the pillar of fire by night from before the people." There's a concept put forth by scholars called the Shekinah glory of God. The Shekinah was the presence of God, God dwelling among us. And you see that throughout the history of the Old Testament. The Egyptians also saw this glory. Look at chapter 14, verse 24 and 25. "And it came to pass that in the morning watch, the Lord looked unto the host of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and of the cloud, and troubled the host of the Egyptians, and took off their chariot wheels. And they drave them heavily, so that the Egyptians said, Let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Lord fighteth for them against the Egyptians." The Egyptians saw the glory, they saw the power of God. And what happened? They had to flee. He's too powerful. He's too glorious. Turn now over to Exodus chapter 33. God went with his people. He dwelt with his people. Look at verse 9. And this is after the Israelites had made the golden calf, and Moses had come down and found them worshiping an idol. And then after that, God tries to restore his people. "And it came to pass, as Moses entered into the tabernacle," verse 9, "the cloudy pillar descended and stood at the door of the tabernacle, and the Lord talked with Moses. And all the people saw the cloudy pillar stand at the tabernacle door, and all the people rose up and worshipped every man in his tent door. And the Lord spake unto Moses face to face, as a man speaketh unto his friend. And he turned again into his camp, and his servant Joshua the son of Nun, a young man, departed not out of the tabernacle." The glory of God, God dwelling among his people, came down and was there. And all the people saw it, and they couldn't help but worship. What power, what glory, what majesty. Look at verse 12. "And Moses said unto the Lord, See, thou sayest unto me, Bring up this people, and thou hast not let me know whom thou wilt send with me. Yet thou hast said, I know thee by name, and thou hast also found grace in my sight. Now therefore I pray thee, if I have found grace in thy sight, show me now thy way, that I may know thee, that I may find grace in thy sight, and consider that this nation is thy people. And he said, My presence shall go with thee, and I will give thee rest. And he said unto him, If thy presence go not with me, carry us up not hence. God's presence, his promise was he was going to go with his people. He would be there. He would dwell among them as they went forward. And Moses understood. He said, if you don't go with us, don't send us up. We need you. We need you. Look at verse 16. For wherein shall it be known here that I and thy people have found grace in thy sight? Is it not that thou goest with us? So shall we be separated, I and thy people, from all the people that are upon the face of the earth. Moses is saying, if you go with us, you are going with us, we know we have found grace in your sight, we will be separate. We will be different than everybody. We will be wholly separated. Moses then asks to see the glory of God. He says in verse 18, he said, I beseech thee, show me thy glory. He wanted to see God in his true form, face to face. And what does God say? And he said, I will make all my goodness pass before thee. I will proclaim the name of the Lord before thee, and I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious. I will show mercy on whom I will show mercy. And he said, you cannot see my face, for there shall no man see me and live. God is so glorious, so powerful, you can't see him and survive. That is the glory of God, the true vision of the Lord. Turn over to chapter 34. Moses goes up with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights. And in verse 28, and he was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights, and did neither eat bread nor drink water. And he wrote upon the tables the words of the covenant, the 10 commandments. And it came to pass, verse 29, when Moses came down from the Mount Sinai with the 2 tables of the testimony in Moses' hands, when he came down from the mount, that Moses knew not that the skin of his face shone while he talked with him. And when Aaron and all the children of Israel saw Moses, behold, the skin of his face shone, and they were afraid to come nigh to him. Look, verse 33. Until Moses had done speaking with them, he put a veil on his face. But when Moses went in before the Lord to speak with him, he took the veil off until he came out. And he came out and spake unto the children of Israel that which he was commanded. And the children of Israel saw the face of Moses, that the skin of Moses' face shone. And Moses put the veil upon his face again until he went in to speak with him. The literal skin of Moses' face after he spent time in the presence and the glory of God glowed. It shone forth. There was a light coming from Moses. That's awesome. That is powerful. And the people were afraid of this power. They feared God. Jesus, or the Lord, also descended upon the mercy seat in Leviticus 16, 1 and 2. After Nadab and Abihu had offered up strange fire, God gives a commandment to Moses for Aaron, and he says, I will be with thee above the mercy seat in the cloud. I will be there dwelling among the people. And he gives very specific instructions to the children of Israel. Do you think God takes his word seriously? Do you think God offers up these commandments to the children of Israel seriously? They're very specific. Very specific. Turn to Isaiah chapter 6. Isaiah 6, Isaiah sees something. It says, in the year King Uzziah died, verse 1, I saw the Lord sitting upon the throne, high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple. Isaiah sees the throne room of God. Above it stood the seraphims. Each one had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face. With 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he did fly. And look at verse 3. And one cried to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is filled with what? His glory. You ask the question, why don't they say, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is filled with his holiness. Because the glory of God is the manifestation of that holiness. You look at what goes forth from God. His people had to be holy. They had to be different. And when they cry out how holy their God is, what happens because of that? Glory fills the entire world. That's the power of God. That's his glory. God with them, shining as a light among his people. Turn over to Isaiah chapter 60. Isaiah prophesies the coming of a light. And we see that there is a battle between light and between darkness. Chapter 60, verse 1. Arise, shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon thee. For behold, the darkness shall cover the earth, and gross darkness the people. But the Lord shall arise upon thee, and his glory shall be risen upon thee, and seen upon thee. And the Gentiles shall come to thy light, the kings to thy brightness of thy rising. Jesus is coming. Somebody is coming who is going to be a light in the darkness, and he is going to draw all men to him. Do you get a picture of this light? Something so amazing, something so powerful. In the Old Testament, people would fall to their face and worship. You remember at the end of Leviticus 9, when the fire comes down and consumes, what happens? Everybody falls on their face and worships God. Why? Because the glory of God is so powerful. The light shining from God's glory is so powerful, it demands worship. Turn to John chapter 1. John chapter 1 starts, In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. The same came for a witness to bear witness of the light, that all men through him might believe. He was not that light, but was sent to bear witness of that light. That light was the true light, which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not. He came unto his own, and his own received him not. But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name, which were born not of blood, nor of the will of flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. Now watch this. And the Word was made flesh, and dwelt among us. And we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. The Word, Jesus Christ, dwelt among us. Just like in the Old Testament with his people, just like God dwelling among his people, the Word was made flesh and dwelt. What was he? He was the light. He was the life. Do you remember in Exodus 13, they were running for their lives. And what protected them? A light. A light showed the way where they should go. That was life. It was protecting and helping and guiding their way. He was glorious, and we beheld his glory. Jesus says in John 8:12, Again, therefore, Jesus spake to them, saying, I am the light of the world. He that follows me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. That's what Jesus Christ is. He helps us escape death. Jesus now became the literal manifestation of God himself in the flesh. Colossians 2:9, for in him dwelleth all the fullness of the Godhead bodily. He was here. Jesus said in John 14:9, he that has seen me has seen the Father. Just like when Moses went and talked to the Father face to face, Jesus Christ was here on earth as the light of the world. And you would think, just like Moses, his face glowed when he got finished spending enough time with Jesus. And he wanted the people to see that. So, Jesus then says, Matthew 5:14-16, ye are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hid. It bears some weight now. We're not just a good influence. We're not just kind to the people around us. We are the light of the world. We are in this battle of darkness and light. He says, neither do men light a lamp and put it under a bushel, but in the stand, and it shineth unto all that are in the house. We heard how not to be ashamed. I'm not ashamed of myself, but more importantly, I'm not ashamed of the gospel. I have to show that. I have to get out there and show it. I don't hide it. I show the light because it is a battle between light and darkness. What is that light? It is glorious. It is God. And what then does he say? What then does he go on to say about that light? Even so, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good works. And then watch. And glorify your Father who is in heaven. We must ascribe, we must extol ultimate value and ultimate love towards our God. And when we do something, when we shine our light, who is it for? It's for God. It's for God. So, ye are the light of the world. How does one become this light? That seems, I can't be a pillar of fire leading people forward, saving lives. I can't be this ultimate light that causes a glow from other people's face. Turn to 2 Corinthians. 2 Corinthians chapter 3. Paul is making a comparison here. And he compares the Old to the New Testament in verse 10. For even that which was made glorious had no glory in this respect, by reason of the glory that excelleth. For if that which is done away was glorious, much more that which remaineth is glorious. Seeing then that we have such hope, we use great plainness of speech. And not as Moses, which put a veil over his face, that the children of Israel could not steadfastly look to the end of that which was abolished. But their minds were blinded, for until this day remaineth the same veil, untaken away in the reading of the Old Testament, which veil is done away in Christ. Christ takes the veil away. Now watch. But even unto this day, when Moses is read, the veil is upon their hearts. Nevertheless, when it shall turn to the Lord, the veil shall be taken away. Now the Lord is that Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. Verse 18, but we all, here's how we become lights in the world. With open face, beholding as in a glass the glory of the Lord, are changed into the same image from glory to glory, even as by the Spirit of the Lord. How does one do it? First thing, you have to look to Jesus, who is the light of the world. Just like Moses, he went before and he was in the presence of God. You need to get into the presence of Jesus. You need to look into what this is called, the perfect law of liberty. And you need to be changed. You need to seek God. Hebrews 12:2, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne room of God. Jesus is there. You want to see something that will make you glow, you need to look to Jesus. Look into the perfect law of liberty. But also, what else does it say? You're beholding, as in a glass, the glory of the Lord and are changed into the same image. Have you ever been around somebody who just made you want to be a better man? I know I have so many people in my life, and I'm thankful for them. The Bible talks about iron sharpening iron. That's really important, especially for a young person. What happens in your life is you get to a point where you say, I'm kind of figuring this life thing out. I've got this. And then you start making decisions on your own, and you say, I'm going to try it my way, and I'll make some mistakes along the way, but I'll figure it out. I've got this. And I know that's how it is. Don't tell me it's not. What Jesus does is when you spend enough time looking at Jesus, he will change you. He will change you for the better. And that's what you have to try and do. You have to stay with him. You look to him, and then you have to allow him to actually change you, actually make a difference in your life. James 1:23 says, For if any be a hearer of the word, and not a doer, he is like unto a man beholding his natural face in a glass. He's looking at himself. For he beholds himself, and then goes his way, and straightway forgetteth what manner of man he was. But whoso looketh into the perfect law of liberty, and continues therein, he being not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, this man shall be blessed in his deed. You have to stay there. You have to continue with Christ. We talked about this morning how you can come to something for a year. You're here for a week, and then a year later, you're going to be here again. You have to be here, and then when you leave, you have to continue to look to Jesus. You have to stay with him, or else what happens? The light fades. The light can fade if you leave. This is not a weekly thing. You have to let it change you. James equates it to somebody who looks and says, okay, I have to fix this, and then turns, totally forgets what just happened, and then goes on his way. You have to make the necessary changes when you read this book. And in order to do it, you have to stay in the book. And then finally, turn to 1 Peter chapter 2. 1 Peter 2. Verse 9, But ye are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, and holy nation, a peculiar people, that you should show forth the praises of him who hath called you. Where has he called you? Out of darkness into his marvelous light. Moses said, you will go with us, so we will be separate. We will be different than everybody. Where has Jesus called you? You're a royal priesthood. You're peculiar. You're different. Shining the light requires holiness. It requires you to be completely different than the world around you. You can't shine a little darkness and a little light. It has to be complete holiness. And what happens, Jesus says, what do? You glorify your Father which is in heaven. This man shall be blessed in his deeds. True shining of the light is understanding what is the light? Who is the light? What do I have to be to shine the light? I cannot just be a person wanting to do good deeds. I have to be completely and utterly a Christian, shining forth the glory of God. That's hard to do. I understand it is hard to do. If you are a Christian and you struggle in that area, turn to Jesus. You want your light to be restored. You want to shine forth the glory of God. You have to turn back to Jesus. You need to. There is no other way. If you want to be in Christ, Ephesians 1 talks about all spiritual blessings. And part of that is salvation. It says all spiritual blessings are in Christ. Ephesians 1:3. Well, how does one get into Christ? You turn over to Galatians 3:26 and 27. For as many as have been baptized into Christ, put on Christ. You have to become a member of this body, a member of this family. Change yourself. Look to Jesus, make the change, and then become holy, a holy nation, so that you can shine forth as Jesus talked about. Making a change in this world, fighting against the darkness, and becoming a light in your community. As we stand and as we sing.